For the second time this year, a Joe Gibbs car took out Chase Elliott late in the race. We've got a lot to react to after the first playoff race of the season. Do you want to be I'm recording. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Yeah, that's right, I'm not in my normal studio. I'm actually on the road filming this on the go, if you will. It's very minimalist decor in here, but yeah, it's all throwback themed. You know, got the hat, got everything. Tonight was a very busy night for a number of reasons. You know, it was the first race of the playoffs. That's huge. It was also the throwback night, something that's sort of become an annual tradition the last several years. And then, of course, it was the Southern 500, a crown jewel event at Darlington all on its own. So a very important race for a number of reasons. I'm gonna go through a few of the top stories. We're going to spend most of this episode talking about the top finishers and a couple of the crazy things that happened at the end of this race. We're also going to put this race on the Groovy gauge at the very end as per usual, but to start with, I just want to talk about the throwback paint schemes because that was one of the big storylines coming into tonight's race, and I thought the schemes, actually seeing them on the racetrack in the sunset and then again, of course, at night under the lights, they look fantastic. I said in my video last week I really liked all the Hendrick Motorsports Jimmy Johnson throwbacks. I said then that Alex Bowman's was my favorite. It was my favorite car of all the cars tonight. I thought just as far as which of the throwbacks was the best looking, it was Alex Bowman's. The Dayglow yellow accents on the bumper, and of course the number on the side looked fantastic. There were a number of times tonight where I looked up and saw his car, I saw Chase Elliott's car, and I thought, oh, is that Jimmy? No, that's not Jimmy Johnson. You know, Lowe's has only been out of the sport for 2 or 3 years now. You know, it's still pretty fresh in my memory seeing the blue and gray and the neon yellow and stuff like that. So don't blame me for thinking it was Jimmy Johnson at first. But the throwback schemes tonight across the board were fantastic. If you missed my video last week, I went in depth and reacted to pretty much all of them in that one video. They were great. It was fantastic. The throwback weekend at Darlington should continue to be a long-running tradition. I think this was the 5th year, 6th year? When did they start? 2015? I think they started in 2015 or 2016. This is the 5th or 6th year, something like that. It should continue for many more years. I think this is absolutely fantastic. At some point, they're going to run out of throwbacks, but I don't know, at some point you can start recycling. I mean, we've seen that Coca-Cola Bobby Allison throwback style paint scheme pretty much every single year at this point, so you know, it never really gets old. Anyway, let's talk about the race because there are some guys that surprised me tonight in a very good way, and then there are other drivers that completely missed it tonight at Darlington and find themselves in a little bit of a hole going into the second race of the playoffs. That's Richmond this coming Saturday night. The first big surprise tonight is it was not the Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin show, the two drivers that ran really well here back in May. Harvick and Hamlin were there. They were always like in the top 5, top 10, and obviously Kevin Harvick ended up winning the race, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they did not dominate. They did not lead the most laps for most of the night. Martin Truex Jr. seemed to have the fastest car. Late in the race, Chase Elliott came on pretty strong and had a real shot at going for the win until their incident. But it really was not the Harvick and Hamlin show throughout tonight's race. In fact, at the end of this race, Denny Hamlin was severely struggling with the handle on his race car. So definitely opens the door to the idea that, you know, maybe someone like a Martin Truex Jr. or an Alex Bowman or a Chase Elliott or someone like that could definitely sneak into Phoenix and steal this championship away. It is not a done deal. It is not a lock by any stretch of the imagination, as we kind of got a glimpse of tonight. The other big surprise to me was Team Penske, and by affiliation, the Wood brothers with Matt DiBenedetto. They struggled tonight. They didn't necessarily lack in speed. In fact, Joey Logano drove up and ended up with a top 5 finish, even though he had a little bit of damage. But pretty much all of the Penske cars at some point or another in this race ran into issues, whether it was damage on a restart, whether it was being forced to pit out of sequence, catching a caution at the wrong, or in some cases the right times, or in the case of Matt DiBenedetto and the 21 team, just running bad, just being slow. Both Matt DiBenedetto and Ryan Blaney ended up finishing outside the top 20 tonight, and in the case of Matt DiBenedetto, he actually ran outside the top 20 for most of the night. That's not going to cut it, especially not for Matt DiBenedetto when he comes into the playoffs with 0 playoff points. He's already in a hole. He cannot afford to have nights like tonight. That's why I picked him to be out in the first round, and after this first race, I'm not regretting that pick. I'm standing by it. And Ryan Blaney's struggles began before the race even started with, you know, improper ballast being found by NASCAR, 10-point penalty before the cars even took the grid. He had to race tonight without Todd Gordon, his crew chief, on top of the pit box. I'm sure that played a factor in some of their issues as well. If you look at this year, it's really been Harvick, Hamlin, and then Team Penske, like Keselowski and Logano and Blaney, honestly, are basically 3 through 5, if you ask me. And they were nowhere to be seen tonight other than Joey Logano, who mounted a pretty impressive comeback there towards the end with left rear damage. The other big surprise tonight, we'll look at the top finishers in a moment, was Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon came into these playoffs, I'd say a dark horse. A lot of people say his win at Texas a few weeks back was kind of a fluke, but that's what locked him into the playoffs ahead of maybe some other guys that ended up missing out. But I don't think anybody looked at these playoffs and thought Austin Dillon was, maybe some of y'all picked him to get through the first round. Maybe some of y'all did that, but I don't think hardly anyone picked Austin Dillon to go further than the second round of this year's playoffs, but he ran fantastic tonight. Sure, the way some of those late race cautions fell, that late race debris caution, which was a fair caution, plenty of people were throwing conspiracy theories out, but they showed the chunk of metal sitting in the middle of the racing groove on the backstretch. They threw the caution like a lap later. It was a good call by NASCAR. But sure, Austin Dillon sort of caught a break with the timing of that caution and everything, but he ran up in the top 10 for much of the race, even worked his way up into the top 5 late, and was holding his own. Was running as fast as we saw there in the final couple laps, almost ran down Kevin Harvick for the race win. He was in the right place at the right time when Truex and Chase Elliott had their issue and ended up getting a second place finish out of it, came this close to winning the Southern 500. Austin Dillon has a knack for performing well in big races. Of course, his 2 wins or before this year were the Daytona 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. Texas is still a very high-paying race. It's still a very valuable race in a lot of ways. He won this year, and the Southern 500 would have been his 3rd crown jewel already if he managed to get the win tonight. But Austin Dillon impressed the heck out of me. I had Austin Dillon being out in the first round, and we'll see, because Richmond's very different. We haven't raced at Richmond yet this year, and of course Bristol, anything can happen. We'll see, but Austin Dillon impressed me tonight, and if he can run anywhere close to how he did tonight these next 2 weeks, there's a good chance he's moving on to at least the second round, and credit to Austin Dillon. A quick look here at the top finishers in tonight's race. I haven't talked about him much yet, but Kevin Harvick got the victory. This matches his career high of 8 wins in a season, and he still has 9 more races to do it. Like I said, he held off Austin Dillon at the very end. The 2 of them ran well. Like I said, Kevin Harvick, even though it wasn't a dominating performance by any means, he ran in the top 10, and then when the sun went down, managed to kind of sneak his way up into the top 5. There were some varying pitch strategies at the end there that might have worked in his favor, might not have, but ultimately that late race caution changed things. He had a good restart, came out right behind Truex and Chase Elliott, but Kevin Harvick was not the best car tonight by a long mile. Chase Elliott and Martin Truex Jr. basically went in together on an early Christmas present for Kevin Harvick. Let's go and talk about that. I haven't talked about this yet, but the most notable individual incident of tonight's race, because it was a pretty straightforward, I'll be honest, a fairly dry race for most of the evening, but things picked up with a little less than 20 laps to go when Martin Truex Jr. tracked down Chase Elliott for the race lead. Martin Truex Jr. led the most laps tonight, seemed to have the best car, but Chase Elliott, of course, with that help from that timely caution, managed to get the lead on the restart and held him off for a while. But as Truex started to gain on Chase Elliott in turns 3 and 4 made the inexplicable decision to run the bottom line and giving Truex free rein at the very top of the track, allowing him to gain huge momentum around turn 4. I don't know why Chase Elliott did that. From the 10 or 20 laps before that, he'd been running the top and it had been working, so I don't know why Chase went to the bottom. But of course, this allowed Truex to get side by side with Chase Elliott as they went off into turn 1. Truex sailed it down in there and was never close to clearing Chase Elliott. He wedged both of them up into the wall, caused significant damage on both of their race cars. They both dropped like rocks. Truex actually had to pit because he had a tire going down as a result. It was akin to what Chase Elliott did earlier this year at Bristol when he just door slammed Joey Logano out of the way, just missed the corner. 4-wheel slid it way too early and put them both in the wall and cost them both that race. Martin Truex Jr., usually the kind of even keel, laid back, a lot of people don't like Martin Truex, and they think he whines, they think he complains too much on the radio. There's a lot of people don't like Martin Truex Jr., but Martin Truex Jr. more often than not races people cleanly. And I don't think he is intending to put Chase Elliott in the wall. It sounds like his spotter was extremely frustrated because his spotter never cleared him. Truex just went for it. I mean, it was late in the race. It was really hard to pass at Darlington all night long, as it usually is at Darlington Raceway, and he just went for it. He thought he had enough position that he could kind of slide his way up, sort of like what Denny Hamlin tried to do to Ross Chastain in the Xfinity race yesterday. Didn't work for Hamlin for a different reason, but Martin Truex Jr. was just trying to complete a pass the way you do at Darlington Raceway typically, and underestimated the speed Chase Elliott was going to be able to carry in that outside lane. The 9 car was still really good. Again, the only reason Truex got to Chase Elliott's inside at all is because Chase Elliott just gave up the dominant line for apparently no reason at all, other than I guess he got bored. I don't know. It really was the classic double choke. Now, I'm going to put most of this on Martin Truex Jr. because he's the one who ultimately blew the corner and wrecked them both. But Chase Elliott, again, this is like what happened in Dover in 2018 when he just refused to run the top and allowed Kyle Busch to run him down. And with 2 to go, Kyle Busch just passed him easily like he wasn't even there. Everyone was wondering, what the heck was Chase Elliott thinking in that race? Why did he not change his line? In this case, it was, why did you change your line, Chase? The top was working just fine. You're keeping Truex at arm's length. The arrow, of course, was playing to your advantage. Why would you give him the top? So in that respect, it was just a lack of focus, or just a underestimation, I guess, from Chase Elliott. So it was a choke on Chase Elliott's part that Truex even got next to him like that. But of course, most of the blame goes on Martin Truex Jr. there. He just missed the corner. It wasn't, a hostile act or anything like that, like nothing intentional by any means, because obviously it ruined Truex's day as well. It was just a misjudgment. I think he just thought he could get more ground on Chase Elliott on entry than he did, and ended up wedging them both into the wall. So really frustrating. If you're a Chase Elliott fan, of course, every right to be pissed off after that one. If you're a Martin Truex fan, I mean, it's just disappointing because he had the best car all night, and with the way Martin Truex Jr. is in the points, yes, getting those 5 playoff points for winning a race would be huge in the next rounds, but as far as this first round is concerned, you just can't have awful nights. And of course, he came away with a lot of stage points tonight and everything, so it's not going to be a catastrophic night for Truex. But man, you just wanted to finish that race in the top 5, and you'd have a huge cushion going into Richmond and then Bristol. But that did not happen, so neither Chase Elliott or Martin Truex Jr. got as many points as they should have tonight. You see that Chase Elliott ended up 20th, Martin Truex Jr. ended up 22nd. You look at this top 10 here, every single driver in the top 10, except for Eric Jones, last year's Southern 500 winner, is a playoff driver. And you see even a lot of the drivers just outside the top 10, like Cole Custer, Brad Keselowski, Denny Hamlin, also playoff drivers. Jimmy Johnson, I want to shout out him, even though he's not a playoff guy, finishing 18th. Man, that car looked great. That throwback scheme to Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. Jimmy Johnson showed up to the track in the hat and the glasses and everything, and the cool fire suit that was like 2 colored. It was black and white, Dale Earnhardt colors on one side, red and blue Petty colors on the other. That was fantastic. He won the throwback weekend as far as the overall look is concerned. But man, I don't know what happened to him because this car just faded at the end of this race. He was up in the top 5 contending with the leaders for most of the evening and then just dropped like a rock. I didn't see if something happened on pit road. I know his pit crew was kind of off all night long, but definitely disappointing. Jimmy Johnson at this point is just racing for a win. It'd be great to see him get one more win here in his final full-time season, and I thought tonight, for at least a while there, he was going to have a very real shot at it, especially with Truex and Elliott eventually having their issues. So that is disappointing, but what you going to do? It's just been the year for Jimmy Johnson. Let's take a quick look at the playoff grid after this first race. Kevin Harvick locked himself in. He was basically locked in already on points. Denny Hamlin plus 54, huge gap. 2 of the Penske cars had to overcome a lot. They came back to get decent finishes. They still have solid cushions. Keselowski plus 22 is not bad. Alex Bowman, another driver who deserves some credit. I thought he might struggle in this first round, but he collected stage points in 1 and 2 and ended up coming home with a top 10 finish. So Alex Bowman built up his cushion a little bit to the bubble. And then you see right there, Truex and Elliott, plus 16 and plus 12. If they just finish this race, those numbers are a lot closer to 20 or 30 points to the good as opposed to, just mid-teens. That's not great. Definitely tense. Austin Dillon, though, plus 10. That's as good as he could have hoped for coming into this race. Great night for Austin Dillon. The Busch brothers just above the cut line. And then right now you have Eric Almirola, Clint Bowyer, Cole Custer, Blaney, and DiBenedetto all kind of right on or right behind the bubble. Clint Bowyer and Almirola are actually tied, I guess, for the last spot. I'm not exactly sure who owns the tiebreaker right now, but definitely really close for all the SHR cars there. And of course, you got 2 Penske guys at the bottom with bad first races of the playoffs. It's hard to say where you go from here. I think if you're a guy like Matt DiBenedetto, Brian Blaney, I think you're just lucky to not be 30 points out at this point with the nights these guys had. So, limit the damage as best you can and go into Richmond hoping for the best. It's going to be the first time anyone's raced at Richmond this year. No practice, no qualifying. Could be surprising. And hopefully Ryan Blaney has his crew chief back so they can be on the same page from the get-go. All right, now, lastly, let's put tonight's race on the Groovy gauge. This was the 3rd Darlington Cup race of the year. My goodness, I'll be honest, I love Darlington. I'm getting a little tired of it. I mean, I unfortunately didn't get to watch much of the Xfinity race, but I did see that epic finish, so that race was fantastic. The trucks today, pretty good race, I'd say, but the Cup Series with the 550 horsepower rules package, just not best suited for Darlington. I think Darlington, of course, is a track more suited for low downforce where the cars can really slide. The one plus side, though, on the Cup Series side of things is that tire wear was still very much a factor. We've seen at some tracks this year, tire wear with this package is virtually non-existent. Darlington is the exact opposite. So that allowed for some interesting pit strategy, especially late in the race. I like that a lot. Overall, tonight's race, I mean, like I said, it was stale. It felt like your average Martin Truex Jr. race. He has a knack for winning typically fairly boring races, historically speaking, but obviously this race heated up at the very end. That late caution for debris, which again was a very fair and very just caution. I've called NASCAR out this year for some sketchy cautions and some questionable officiating decisions, but that caution was 100% legitimate. That changed things up and, quite frankly, turned the whole evening around in a lot of ways. This race was trending for maybe a sub 50% on the Groovy gauge, but with the finish involved, I'm going to give tonight's race a 55% on the Groovy gauge. A slightly above average race, certainly not a race I'm going to go back and watch years from now or days from now or ever from now, but I'll go back and watch clips like the Chase Elliott Truex drama, things like that. I'll go back and look at these paint schemes because I stand by my statement last week. I think this might have been the best collective year of throwback schemes in the Darlington throwback race. So a lot of great things tonight, but overall it's just okay race. It was all right. It was a shame that this race was on cable. I think the Xfinity race yesterday was on big NBC, but the Cup race got stuck on NBCSN. That's a little disappointing, especially when we bill the Southern 500 as a crown jewel event, a marquee event that many drivers have circled on their calendar as one of the biggest races they could possibly win in their NASCAR careers. it feels a little disrespectful to run this race on NBCSN. I don't know what NBC had on the main network tonight, but I know football hasn't started yet, so it'd be nice to get a few of these races on, big NBC before the NFL season rolls around. That's all I'm saying. But that being said, it was a fun evening. I like that they mixed up the booth a little bit. Yeah, the normal crew, and then for about the entire second stage, you had Dale Jr., Dale Jarrett, and Kyle Petty take over, and they were really good. So overall, I thought it was a really fun night. Got to see some fans in the stands, which is always a great sight to see. So I feel good. I had fun. I had a successful throwback weekend, all things considered. That's all I've got for tonight's episode, y'all. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you thought of tonight's Southern 500. Let me know how your favorite driver did. Hopefully they did well. Hopefully they didn't struggle. Hopefully you're not a Chase Elliott or Martin Truex Jr. fan, because I'm sure tonight was very disappointing, unfortunately. But let me know what you thought of tonight's race. Thank you for watching this video. And yeah, I think it's gonna do it. Man, this is hot in here. There's not a fan on or anything like that. So appreciate you guys sticking with me. I will see you all again very, very soon. Have a great rest of your late